Hey guys, Dark Skeleton here, and we have a bunch of new card art and the names of these cards that we can cover right now, and speculate a bit on what each card might be, so that's what we're going to do here. Images are on Hearthstone.com, of course. First up, we have the COGHAMMER. I think this weapon is going to come out of the Blingtron 3000 Battlecry effect. The reason for that is that we've already seen one weapon that comes out of that. It's kind of iffy. COGHAMMER doesn't sound like a great weapon, and on top of that, it's a very mech-sounding name. Of course, Blingtron 3000 is a mech that summons weapons as his battle cry. We haven't seen the other random weapons that are possibilities, but it sounds like a iffy weapon that you can just get for free by summoning the battle cry. Of course, they're not going to give you free gore howls with the Blingtron 3000. That would be insane. Or will they? Next up, we have the COGMASTER wrench. Now, this could be a random weapon from Blingtron, but it could also be something akin to the spare part cards that some mechs like to add to your hand. Maybe there's a gnome or something that can give you a wrench on your hand, possibly to restore health to mechs. That sounds like a distinct possibility. If it's not something like that, it's probably a really weak weapon that you can get from Blingtron 3000. We also have Crush, which I assume is a spell since it doesn't have the name of a minion in it. And since it has a picture of a Pit Lord, I'm thinking this is a Warlock spell. Now, Crush, a Pit Lord, that implies big, stompy. I'm thinking it'll be something like a Consecration for 5 mana, maybe with some other special effects. But I'd say it's very likely it'll be a Warlock spell. We also have Echo of MEDIVH. If you notice the image on this, that is a gnome wearing mage armor from World of Warcraft. And MEDIVH is also a mage, so I'm assuming this is a mage spell. I think it's unlikely that it's not a mage spell. Now, Echo would imply something that was on the field coming back or repeating itself. Could have something to do with spell effects, but I think it'll be more likely that it's resummon a minion that died last turn or something along those lines. Whatever it's going to be, I'm sure it'll be a pretty interesting card. We have GAZRILLA, who is an obvious reference to the Godzilla franchise. In the Zul'Farrak instance, he was basically a 3 or 4 headed Hydra who you would fight as a boss. Since it's kind of a beastly dragon kind of thing, it's possible this could be another Hunter legendary, or it could just be a neutral legendary. But I believe it's going to be a legendary, of course, because it's a named mob. I mean, Hogger's considered a legendary. As for what he could do, I'm thinking they'll add some kind of new mechanic here with this GAZRILLA card. It'll probably be a high-cost legendary, and it might have some kind of special ability like putting a poison effect on an enemy minion, though that might be too complicated for Hearthstone, or to be able to attack multiple targets at once since it has multiple heads. But really pure speculation there. It's hard to say. This is the Illuminator. If you were checking out the Hearthstone website, the official one, you would have noticed that they are having a voting contest to determine which cards they're going to preview for the Hearthstone community next. And Illuminator is one of those two. Currently, Illuminator's in the lead, so it's very, very likely this will be the next card that we get to actually see the stats on. As for what it could do, it does seem to be a priest card, a minion. I'm thinking Illuminator, it's going to reveal stealth minions. And that would be pretty much the second card in the game that can do that, as far as I know. The only one I can think of is Flare. Next we have KEZAN Mystic, the other option for the voting contest right now. This card is probably not going to be the one that gets announced in a couple days. But as for what it could do, Mystic would imply some kind of shaman effects. It's a little bit more mysterious, honestly. My guess is that it's a Battlecry Shaman minion that's something akin to the Wind Speaker. It would probably not be giving Wind Fury, though. It might be something like, when summoned, give a minion taunt, or give a minion taunt with 2 extra hit points. Or maybe when it's summoned, it'll put down a totem such as Earthbind Totem, being able to restrict or freeze an enemy minion for 1 turn. Mystic could really imply a lot of different things, but it doesn't seem like it'll be like the other Goblin cards where it just tries to blow everything up. I do think it'll be more of a support minion. Next we have Gift of the NAARU. I think this will be something similar to the Chosen of Prophet Velen card, and it's most likely going to be a priest minion. A, you can see that the character in question is wearing priest armor, and B, priest is the one taking all the Prophet Velen, Gift of the Prophet cards. Along those same veins, I think this is going to be a buff card. Possibly something like +2/+2 and Divine Shield for 3 or 4 mana. Blizzard's already demonstrated that they're okay with giving spell power out as a spell card, so I think they might also consider adding in other effects that normally you couldn't get from spells. It could also be a healing effect, as Gift of the NAARU in World of Warcraft was a Draenei racial ability that would heal a target. Next we have MALGANIS, who's obviously going to be a legendary of some kind. The question is, who's it going to go to? Because Mal'Ganis is a demon lord, I have to assume it would be a warlock demon, but it's also strongly possible that it'll just be a neutral one. Because Mal'Ganis and other dreadlords always had these kind of shadowy demon powers that are somewhat like vampires, honestly, I think that he'll have a battle cry that's something akin to draining the life out of enemy units, possibly AoE, and a good board clear similar to Baron Geddon, but possibly without the drawback of killing all your own stuff too. Next we have MALORNE, who I'm not actually familiar with in the World of Warcraft lore, but it does appear to be a Stalag, obviously a named minion, so probably a legendary, and I'm thinking if it does belong to a class, it's probably going to be Druid. He kind of has his holy vibe going about him, so I think that he's going to have some kind of defensive board effect when he's summoned or as a passive ability. Possibly something like Stormwind Champion, where all minions get a buff, like +1/+1, but maybe more interesting than that since it's probably a legendary. And also since Cenarius already does that kind of effect anyway. Maybe it'll protect your other creatures, making them immune to spells while MALORNE is on the field. Hard to say for sure. If anyone knows MALORNE well and the Warcraft lore, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Next up we have Muster for Battle, which is an obvious spell effect. It looks to be something along the lines of a warrior card. The battle word inside of its name would also imply that. Mustering would imply, okay, you get a lot of creatures. I don't think it'll summon creatures as a spell, but maybe it'll buff the ones you already have on the field. Something like a Savage Roar, where you have this army already prepared for battle, and you can just send them all in and devastate your opponent. But it could just as easily be a Paladin card as well. Maybe it'll give all of your minions on the field Divine Shield. Next we have One-Eyed Cheat, who I would bet money on is a neutral pirate legendary. Though when I think of a cheat, I don't necessarily think of a synergy card like the other pirates, though I'm sure it'll have the pirate tag on there too for pirate decks. But I think what it might do is something like steal a buff from an enemy minion and give it to One-Eyed Cheat as a battle cry. It could also do something like raise the cost of opponent's minions, kind of like as a taxing goblin minion that just doesn't let your opponent play anything. But whatever the effect will be, I think it's going to be a negative for your opponent. Next up we have Sabotage, which is clearly a rogue spell. Sabotage would imply that your opponent's been trying to set something up, and you are going to ruin their plans. Could be like an Assassinate for any minion that has buffed up stats or any kind of buff on it, like given a Divine Shield, was given +2/+2 in Taunt by a Mark of Nature, and then you take it out for a reduced mana cost, something like 3 mana-ish. It could also play something like a counterspell, not a secret you actually put on the field, but a punishment for an opponent who plays spells. Such as deals 2 extra damage if your opponent's played a spell in the last turn. But in any case, considering that it's a priest that he's trying to stab in that picture, I do think it'll be a card that's good against enemies who are playing a lot of spells. In this one we have Shield Maiden, who is a gnome warrior carrying some kind of heavy shield, implying that she is a tank. Now I think this will be a neutral minion, as a lot of these goblins and gnomes are, though it doesn't have to necessarily be. I think this card will be a very defensive minion. You summon it to the field, and in some way it's going to protect your other minions, but I don't think it's going to be a standard taunt, or if it is a standard taunt, they'll have some kind of variable in there to make it different than other taunts like a Sinjin Shieldmaster. Possibly, when this card's on the field, if any of your other minions are attacked, or if you as the player are attacked, it gains some extra attack as a retaliation kind of effect. It could also have some other kind of defensive shield-like effects, like enemy spells that are cast can only target this minion. Or it could just simply be a taunt minion with a lot of HP. Now we have the STEAMWHEEDLE Sniper. This card immediately makes me think of Ventrico, which, while it's on the field, you have to pay 3 extra mana to summon any kind of minion. I think this card will be in the same boat where it's a powerful minion, but it has some kind of drawback. Being a sniper would kind of imply that it has some ability to target an opponent's minion without doing a regular attack. So maybe as a battle cry, it has a deal 1 or 2 damage, maybe randomly, because it's goblins, and a lot of goblin and gnome stuff is completely random. But then it has another drawback, like while it's on the field, minions cost 1 more to play. At the very least, I think this will be one of the minions that has a high attack stat, but low HP. 3 cards left, we have the Tree of Life. Now, just like all the other trees, I only have to assume that this is a Druid card, akin to an Ancient of Lore or an Ancient of War. Now, Tree of Life, kind of to me, thinks a little bit weaker than Ancient of War, Ancient of Lore, so I'm thinking a 6 cost minion. Probably less attack, 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 hit points, but then as a battle cry it's going to do some kind of healing effect. I imagine like a stronger version of a Darkscale Healer. When this creature is summoned, restore 3 HP to every friendly minion on the field. That's my guess. We have Ancestor's Call. Now, this character appears to be a shaman wearing some kind of tiered set armor. So, it's going to be a spell, shaman spell most likely. In World of Warcraft, there is a shaman ability called Call of the Ancestors, which is about having 4 totems on your bar at once and being able to summon them all to the field. This could be something like that, where it summons all 4 of the shaman totems for 1 card. Or it could also be summon a specific kind of shaman minion, something like a Feral Spirits. Or it could just be a shaman-specific buff. Hard to say for certain, but I definitely think it's going to be either summoning something or buffing your other minions. Lastly, we have BOLVAR FORDRAGON, obviously going to be a legendary. Now, will they make this a paladin legendary? He is a paladin, but would it just be too similar to having Uther in a paladin deck? If it is a paladin legendary, I would think it might be something to do with Divine Shields. Possibly, like I mentioned on one of those cards earlier, giving Divine Shield to all your friendly minions. But that idea does sound a little bit lame, so maybe they'll make BOLVAR FORDRAGON actually a neutral minion, a paladin unit that everybody can collect and use. Maybe they'll make him a very, very aggressive paladin card where he can do lots of damage or have some kind of game-ending buff. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Of course, keep in mind that this is just pure speculation based on name and card art. As for what each card will actually do and how good it will be in each deck, we'll just have to wait for the coming days. Of course, naturally, as soon as we know what the cards do, I'll be commenting on them as I have in other videos, so if you want to hear about that, go ahead and subscribe and I'll be able to give you my first impressions of each card.